These aren't your typical comic book bad guys. Invincible delivers villains that will make you question everything. Kicking off our list, a villain who consistently catches viewers off guard, Darkseid. Yes, he might appear as if he stepped out of a B-movie from the golden age of cheesy sci-fi, complete with those hilariously clunky earthquake-generating gauntlets. But beneath that campy exterior lies a surprisingly potent threat. Darkseid has an uncanny talent for choosing the most symbolically charged battlegrounds. His debut saw him nearly toppling Invincible amidst the stoic faces of Mount Rushmore, a battle that was as visually striking as it was destructive. Then he returned with a vengeance, amplifying his powers and conjuring magma monsters to wreak havoc upon the Washington Monument. This wasn't just about wanton destruction, it was a deliberate attack on the very symbols of American power. What truly sets Darkseid apart is his sheer resilience and the raw, unpredictable nature of his abilities. He's not just shaking the ground, he's manipulating the planet's core, unleashing seismic forces that can level cities. And let's not forget, this is a man who casually shrugged off a plunge into a freaking volcano. That kind of survival instinct, coupled with his persistent ability to evolve and amplify his powers, makes Darkseid a villain who consistently defies expectations and deserves far more respect than his retro aesthetic might suggest. Okay, so we're veering into collective villain territory, but the Flaxans absolutely deserve a spot on this list. They're not a singular antagonist, but a relentless recurring threat that Invincible and the Guardians of the Globe are forced to contend with time and again. Imagine a technologically advanced alien race, armed to the teeth with weaponry far beyond Earth's capabilities, deploying legions of soldiers with a singular goal: planetary conquest. Sounds terrifying, right? Now, add a bizarre, almost comical twist. Their physiology is fundamentally incompatible with Earth's environment. The moment they step foot on our planet, their aging process accelerates to an absurd degree. We're talking about a lifespan that shrinks from decades to mere days, sometimes even hours. They literally crumble into dust as they fight. It's the ultimate use it or lose it scenario, a desperate race against time where every second counts. Picture this, a horde of battle-hardened warriors wielding cutting-edge technology, their faces contorted not just in rage, but in the agonizing awareness of their rapidly approaching demise. It's a constant, visceral reminder of the fragility of life, even for the most technologically advanced beings. This ticking clock element adds a layer of frantic desperation to their attacks, making them unpredictable and dangerously reckless. They're not just fighting to conquer, they're fighting to exist, to achieve their objective before they cease to be. Talk about a high-stakes invasion. These blue-skinned behemoths, the Reanimen, are a terrifying blend of raw power and calculated intellect, like the Hulk's angrier, more scientifically twisted cousins. They're not just muscle-bound brutes, they're walking, talking, cloning factories of destruction. Their physical attributes are staggering, incredible strength that rivals some of the most powerful beings in the Invincible universe, coupled with a near impenetrable durability. But what truly sets them apart is their unnerving ability to replicate themselves. It's a relentless, overwhelming onslaught, like fighting a Hydra where every severed head spawns two more, each just as powerful as the original. This cloning ability isn't just a gimmick, it's a strategic nightmare for any hero. They can flood battlefields, overwhelm defenses, and wear down even the most resilient opponents through sheer attrition. And to make matters worse, they're not mindless drones. These Reanimen are brilliant scientists, capable of developing and deploying advanced weaponry and technology. They're not just relying on brute force, they're strategizing, adapting, and innovating in the midst of combat. Imagine facing an enemy that can not only outmuscle you, but also outthink you and then multiply itself until you're drowning in a sea of identical, equally dangerous foes. It's a psychological and physical assault, a constant reminder that no matter how many you take down, there will always be more. It's like a nightmarish, never-ending wave of blue-skinned terror, designed to break the spirit as much as the body. They're not just fighting to win, they're fighting to exhaust, to demoralize, to make you wish you'd never crossed their path. It's brains and brawn with a heavy dose of we're going to clone ourselves until you absolutely cannot fight anymore. This villain might seem like a joke at first glance, but don't let his goofy appearance fool you. The elephant has superhuman strength and durability, making him a formidable opponent in hand-to-hand combat. He's also surprisingly cunning and resourceful, able to hold his own against some of the strongest heroes in the Invincible universe. I mean, the guy's called the Elephant. You'd think he'd be all about brute force, but he's actually got a pretty good head on his shoulders, or at least where his head should be. He's even had a redemption arc. Who knew an elephant-themed villain could have such depth? This guy is a genius-level intellect with a bit of an environmentalist streak. Okay, maybe streak is an understatement. Dinosaurus is so committed to protecting the environment that he's willing to cause mass destruction and death to achieve his goals. He's like Captain Planet's evil twin brother. He can transform into a freaking dinosaur, and he's not afraid to use his powers to wreak havoc on anyone who threatens the planet. He even blew up Las Vegas to restore the Nevada desert to its original state. Talk about extreme measures. This Viltrumite warrior is the definition of a bloodthirsty warmonger. Conquest takes sadistic pleasure in conquering planets and enjoys inflicting pain on his opponents. He's incredibly strong and durable, even by Viltrumite standards, and his brutal fighting style makes him a terrifying opponent for anyone who crosses his path. This guy is like the ultimate bully, except instead of stealing your lunch money, he's conquering your planet and breaking every bone in your body. He's got a serious superiority complex and a love for violence that makes him one of the most feared Viltrumites in the galaxy. This interdimensional mastermind is like Rick Sanchez with a serious anger management problem. Angstrom Levy possesses the ability to travel between dimensions and has a vast knowledge of alternate realities. He's also a skilled manipulator and strategist, able to outsmart even the most intelligent heroes. But what really makes him dangerous is his vendetta against Invincible. After Invincible accidentally caused him to become disfigured, Levy swore revenge and has been a thorn in Invincible's side ever since. He's like that ex who just can't let go and keeps popping up at the worst possible times. Invincible's own dear old dad takes the third spot on our list. As a Viltrumite, Omni-Man possesses incredible strength, speed, and durability. He was initially Earth's greatest protector, but his true mission was to weaken the planet for a Viltrumite invasion. Talk about a family betrayal. His brutal battle against his own son left a lasting impact on Invincible and the entire world. It's like finding out your dad is secretly an alien conqueror who wants to enslave your planet. Not exactly Father of the Year material. This former hero turned villain is one of the most complex and fascinating characters in the Invincible universe. Robot, initially a member of the Teen Team, gradually revealed his ruthless and calculating nature. He possesses a genius-level intellect and a vast network of resources, allowing him to manipulate events on a global scale. His transformation from a trusted ally to a manipulative and dangerous adversary makes him one of the most compelling villains in the series. It's like watching your best friend slowly become a supervillain mastermind. Talk about a trust issue. Taking the top spot on our list is the ultimate Viltrumite powerhouse, Thrag. As the former Grand Regent of the Viltrum Empire, Thrag possesses unmatched strength, durability, and combat experience. He's a ruthless and cunning leader who will stop at nothing to achieve his goals. This guy's basically the Viltrumite version of Superman, but with a serious god complex and a penchant for violence. He's so powerful that he can take on Invincible and Omni-Man at the same time and still come out on top. Thrag's sheer power and unwavering determination make him the most formidable villain in the Invincible universe. So we've dissected the terrifying minds and devastating actions of Invincible's most formidable villains. But what if things had gone differently? What if these villains, or even Invincible himself, had taken alternate paths?
Starting off our list at number 10 is Apocalypse. If it wasn't for his goal of mutant domination and evolution, Apocalypse would vaporize the X-Men whenever he wanted to, and even if that wasn't how he did it, he has the capacity to wipe out the X-Men in a whole handful of ways. For starters, Apocalypse is what is called an external. These are mutants who are immortal, share a psychic connection, and who can revive themselves, so he can just never be permanently taken down, and he has been around for about 5,000 years. Apocalypse's original mutant ability was to be able to control his molecular structure, but over time, with the mentality of survival of the fittest, he has enhanced his abilities and even gained new ones through the use of celestial technology, celestial armor, and at least 2 different techno-organic viruses. He can do a lot with his molecular manipulation, including heal himself and turn his limbs into simple melee weapons, but also technologically complex weapons like plasma cannons. But I think the most impressive thing he can do is consciously and subconsciously grant himself a huge amount of powers at will. That makes him too much for the MCU already, and we haven't even talked about his celestial energy manipulation, his psionic abilities, or any of his countless horsemen of the apocalypse, all of whom were given power boosts by this unstoppable mutant. Coming in at number 9 is Thanos. Now before you come for me in the comments about how Thanos is literally already in the MCU, I want to point out the little fact that the version of Thanos from the MCU is like a schoolboy compared to the comic book version of Thanos. Thanos in the comics is an absolute monster. monster. In the MCU, Thanos is fueled by an altruistic motive to help the universe. In the comics, he straight up enjoys taking people's lives. Thanos is essentially an omnicidal maniac. He's extremely prideful, violent, deceptive, malevolent, treacherous, and ruthless to the point that he doesn't care about sacrificing innumerable planets and civilizations, even his own race, in order to praise his love, Mistress Death, and gain her affection. Thanos also possesses an insatiable hunger for power, always seeking to obtain objects of incalculable might and influence, such as the cosmic cubes or the infinity gems. He does all that while speaking in a super sophisticated, calm, and collected demeanor, which they did get right in the MCU, I'll give them that. Not only that, but being a massive hulking Eternal with a deviant gene, Thanos is one of the most powerful of the Eternals of Titan, with an innate ability to synthesize cosmic energy, allowing for energy and matter manipulation. Thanos in the MCU is no pushover, sure, but comic book Thanos, he puts him to shame. Number 8, Zom. We have seen the character of Dormammu in the MCU. He was an insanely powerful mystical entity who Doctor Strange had to basically lose to a million times and trick to defeat. Well, it took all of comic book Dormammu's power plus the help of the cosmic being Eternity just to restrain the extra-dimensional monster known as Zom, with the magical links of living bondage and the crown of blindness. And with these tools, these massively powerful beings only managed to trap Zom in an amphora, in a world beyond all worlds, in a time beyond all time. Well, when Umar, the sister of Dormammu, invaded Earth and Doctor Strange could not defeat her, he needed some way to put her down. The Ancient One told Doctor Strange about Zom, and Doctor Strange decided that he was going to unleash the monster to easily defeat Umar. Now, I don't know why the Ancient One thought this would be a good idea, because now, being free and not wanting to go back, Zom turned on Doctor Strange. Zom is so powerful that there was absolutely nothing that Doctor Strange could even do. Even if all the reality warping heroes and all the Avengers combined forces, they would not be able to defeat Zom. It took the power of the living tribunal, the representative of the one above all and the judge of the multiverse, who had not even been seen in Marvel Comics before this point, to just whisk him away. The tribunal then scolded Doctor Strange for summoning a being who could literally wipe out the multiverse. Zom has no other goal than to completely annihilate and destroy everything. Ever. Now, Strange has since channeled Zom in extremely dire situations, and that's the only time I could really imagine the MCU even mentioning his name. Number 7, the Void. Bob Reynolds was granted the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns after consuming the Golden Century Serum, which was a much more potent offshoot of the original Super Soldier Serum. He has photokinetic-based powers fueled by the sun itself that include molecular manipulation, immortality, insane super strength, speed, invulnerability, stamina, agility, reflexes, and senses, flight, teleportation, energy absorption and blasts, psionic abilities, and even reality warping abilities within a small area. He used his powers for the greater good of all, and he was the example of what a hero should be. He had connections to Iron Man, was active during the years just prior to the Fantastic Four's emergence. He became a role model for Spider-Man as well as an ally to the X-Men, and equal to Reed Richards and a friend to the Hulk. The thing about the Sentry is that he's accompanied by a dark persona called the Void. The Void has all the same abilities plus seemingly even more. The Void went on a rampage that took the lives of around 1,000,000 people and almost destroyed Manhattan. Full rosters of the Avengers, X-Men, and the Fantastic Four all went to take on the Void, and they couldn't do a thing. Only the Sentry himself could really subdue the Void, and it wasn't even permanent. Now, later on in the Siege event, Norman Osborn used the Sentry to attack Asgard, but this accidentally unleashed the Void, and it totally obliterated Asgard completely, taking out Loki in the process. Now, this did actually branch off into a what-if story where the Void was never stopped and destroyed every superhero on Earth, and then went off to destroy the universe. The Sentry is basically a god, and the Void is this god's devil. They may be adding the Sentry to the MCU soon, but I seriously doubt they will make this character or his opposite as powerful as they are in the comics. Number 6, Null. Null is the literal eldritch god of all symbiotes. He's their creator. Null existed before the current version of the universe ever even came to be, in the black void of nothingness. One of his very first acts after he was awoken by the light created by the foundation of the universe was creating the all-black Necrosword. This was the very first symbiote, and it was was immensely powerful. Using it, Null was able to slice the head clean off of a Celestial. For this insane feat of power, he was banished to a void where he worked more and more on the sword, and eventually he broke free and went out into the universe with the intent of wiping out various gods until he was defeated and he lost the sword to Gore the God Butcher. And if we want to talk about villains who should have been more powerful in the MCU, he is top of the list. Null then goes on to make more and more symbiotes who all share a hive mind under the control of Null. They eventually rebel and imprison Null inside the symbiote homeworld Clintar, but he is one of the strongest villains Marvel Comics has ever shown us. He faced off against all the Earth's heroes and nearly won. He has awoken, enslaved, and controlled Celestials, and even defeated the Sentry, ripping him in half and absorbing the Void. The only thing that defeated him was Eddie Brock's Venom wielding the Unit Power, aka Captain Universe, the protector of the universe, and the opposite to everything that Null represents. Number 5. Molecule Man. While attempting to fix an atomic-powered device, a 1,000,000,000,000 accident occurred, bombarding Owen Reese with radiation and transforming his body. Now, this man, Owen Reese, was the most powerful being in the entire multiverse. The accident also caused a minuscule hole between Earth's dimension and another, allowing the being who would eventually become known as the Beyonder to become aware of a universe teeming with life, which would lead to the events of the first and eventually second Secret Wars. Now, Uatu the Watcher, who used to never become involved in the events of Earth, sensed the Molecule Man and the danger that he posed. He contacted the Fantastic Four, warned them of the threat, transported them to face him, and the Fantastic Four couldn't do a damn thing to the Molecule Man, until Mr. Fantastic was able to deduce that the Molecule Man could not alter the molecules of living things. But that wasn't even a real limitation of the Molecule Man. That was just a subconscious limitation that the Molecule Man put on himself. The kicker is that, in reality, Reese's accident was caused by the Beyonders themselves. They created the Molecule Man as a singularity in every reality to basically use the villain as a device that would destroy its universe. The purpose of their experiment was to eventually destroy all the Molecule Men at the same time just to see what would happen, which was a key part of the latest Secret Wars event. But Molecule Man, being used by Dr. Doom and eventually Reed Richards, was able to rebirth the entire cosmos. Could it work in the MCU? Sure, it could, but the character would just be a plot device. I doubt they would actually use him as an actual villain. Number 4. Abraxas. Abraxas is the polar opposite of the cosmic entity Eternity. This means his whole reason for existing is to destroy all of the multiverse, which, I'll be honest, there are a few different characters in Marvel Comics who exist for that reason, and funnily enough, a bunch of them are on this list. But Abraxas is also tied to the incredibly unstoppable cosmic entity Galactus. Whenever Galactus would consume a planet, it would keep Abraxas in check. So, when Galactus was destroyed in a story called Galactus the Devourer, Abraxas was released and begins his path of ultimate destruction. As a cosmic entity, Abraxas' powers are essentially limitless, and his whole existence is kind of important to the universe, which means he can't really be taken out like a normal villain can. So the question of how he was defeated is kind of important. In Fantastic Four number 48 to number 50, we learned of an incredibly powerful weapon called the Ultimate Nullifier. It was used back then to threaten Galactus and stop him from destroying the Earth. Reed Richards ended up using the Ultimate Nullifier to essentially rewrite reality, remaking it so that Abraxas just never existed. Abraxas is so unstoppable that we essentially needed a Deus Ex Machina just to defeat him. I think that if he was in the MCU, that's probably the only way they could make the story work, but I think it would basically break the whole MCU for them to do it. Number 3. Mad Jim Jaspers. When Captain Britain is sent to Earth 238 in Marvel Superheroes UK number 377 in August of 1981, we are introduced to a guy named Mad Jim Jaspers, who is the Prime Minister of England in this reality. Jim has created a cyborg called the Fury that can adapt to anything like a Sentinel can to destroy all the superpowered beings on this Earth. But that's not Jim's power. We are being delivered this information from the inside of a teapot helicopter that is immensely bigger on the inside than it looks on the outside, with the room growing and characters appearing that are already passed away or that resemble Alice in the Wonderland characters. That's because Mad Jim Jaspers is a mutant with an insane level of reality warping powers. The thing thing is, this character is not fully in control of his abilities. Now eventually we are introduced to an Earth 616 reality, Mad Jim Jaspers, who is way more powerful than his 238 counterpart. When Captain Britain pays him a visit, Jim uses his powers to make Captain Britain believe that he was dreaming and that he has woken up out of a coma. He then gets frustrated and wipes this entire reality clean to start everything fresh. Now I don't know what the likelihood of getting Captain Britain into the MCU is, with the multiverse becoming more prominent, it's more likely, but this insanely powerful reality warper is not someone who I expect will ever make an appearance anytime soon. Number 2. The Chaos King. Amatsu Mikubashi first appeared in Thor Blood Oath number 6 in 2006, and he is the Japanese god of chaos, evil, and an aspect of the cosmic being Oblivion. Mikubashi ruled and thrived over the earth when it was nothing more than a formless void of primordial darkness, and as such, his goal now is to bring about a new age of chaos and void and darkness. He is a primordial being who was imprisoned in Yomi, the Shinto underworld, where he remained for centuries, accruing an army of Oni, Shinma demons, and other monsters. Now during the events of Ares God of War, Chaos King attacks Olympus after he had defeated and controlled the Japanese pantheon, meaning he had already done that, and then he goes on to attack Olympus. And that was all after the fall of Asgard during Ragnarok. This is what kickstarts his mission in Chaos War, where he slays the Egyptian gods, the Celtic gods, Shi'ar gods, and the gods of Zen law. He takes out Nightmare in the Dream Dimension, destroys Mephisto, and casts Mistress Death out of hell, making her literally run away, and releases the souls of the damned. He has the power to defeat Eternity and is practically unfazed by attacks from the likes of Zeus. God Hercules, Galactus, Silver Surfer, and Thor together could not defeat Chaos King. To win, this insanely powerful god of gods Hercules had to punch the Chaos King into a portal to an endless void of nothingness, and this was after he had already destroyed 98.76% of the universe. They wouldn't let Gore the God Butcher be as big of a threat to the gods in the MCU as he is in the comics. The Chaos King wipes out 90% of the universe. I just don't see it happening in the MCU at this time. It's just not gonna happen. And finally, in at number 1, the One Below All. In Marvel Comics, there is a character called the One Above All, who hasn't really been seen all too often, but is essentially the equivalent to God, or the creator. Now we have gods like Odin and Zeus and Thor in Marvel Comics and the MCU, but this is kinda different. The One Above All is like the god of everything, the supreme ruler of creation and compassion. It's even been represented as the writers of Marvel Comics at one point, just to give you an idea. So the One Below All, as you can imagine, is the antithesis to this, the personification of destruction and hate. Another way of looking at it is that the One Below All is the One Above All's Hulk form, although that kind of makes things a little bit more complex. The One Below All is trapped in the below place and manifests in realities through gamma and gamma mutates. Basically, this means that the Hulk and other gamma mutated beings have fractions of the One Below All's power and can be taken over by the One Below All for him to try and escape and destroy everything. In an alternate future, it actually does this, taking over Bruce Banner's body and using his power to devour the cosmic entity Eternity and eradicate all life in not only this version of the cosmos, but even going into the next iteration of the universe, ensuring that nothing in that universe will continue to be. Luckily, this is prevented in the Immortal Hulk story, but I'm telling you, go read that story. The One Above All and the One Below All seem like beings that are just too conceptual that I don't know if they'd be making it into Marvel's cinematic universe. But the other part of this is that the Immortal Hulk storyline that features the One Below All is way too graphic for it to be adapted to the MCU and Disney's brand.
Number 10. Circe. Circe was a woman in ancient Greece whose beauty was apparently unparalleled. She married a wealthy prince, but he was a brutish, cruel drunk who she viewed as an animal, so she killed him before eventually coming into contact with the goddess of witchcraft, Hecate, who granted her 1/5 of her soul, which made her a master of magic capable of imposing her will and power on others. After Circe sold her soul, she became obsessed with regaining it from the dimension of hell where it had been sent. She is willing to do do anything and sacrifice anyone to try and regain what she has lost. She is known for turning men into animals that serve as her minions, and has magic powers which allow her to open portals and teleport or give life to inanimate objects. She has geokinesis, the ability to possess people, as well as the ability to freeze time to pull herself and others out of a moment. She is a constant thorn in Wonder Woman's side and a constant source of chaos in the DC universe. Number 9. Black Adam. Teth Adam was a member of the Kandaki tribe in ancient Egypt, whose people were forced into servitude by a cruel pharaoh of the time. Most of his family was killed, but Teth Adam was able to escape with his nephew Amun when the wizard Shazam brought them to the Rock of Eternity to make Amun his chosen champion. Amun learned that he could share his powers with Adam, and the two returned to free their people. Amun wanted to find a peaceful solution, but Adam felt that peace was not an option and wanted revenge, so he killed his nephew in order to gain his power for his own. In the present day of the DC universe, he is the ruler of Kandak, and sometimes a member of super teams like the Justice Society. He flip-flops between being an anti-hero and a straight-up villain, but the fact that he once started World War III and murdered millions of innocent civilians makes me more than comfortable putting him on a villain's list. His enchantment from the wizard Shazam has granted him the strength of Shu, the speed of Horus, the strength of Amun, the wisdom of Zahudi, the power of Aten, and the courage of Mehen. This gives him super strength, speed, flight, and lightning casting abilities, which makes him capable of taking out most of the heroes of the DC universe with ease. The only people who seem to be able to consistently stop him are Shazam, who has pretty much the same powers, and of course, Superman. Number 8. The Reverse Flash. There is some variation on the origins of the Reverse Flash depending on the continuity you are looking at, but usually he is a man from the 25th century called Eobard Thawne, who develops a fascination with the Flash. He works for years on studying the Speed Force until he eventually manages to replicate the accident that gave Barry Allen his superpowers and tries to become a hero himself. Because his time period doesn't have much need for heroes, he causes incidents that he can then solve himself. He eventually became friends with the Flash, but once Flash became aware of his true nature, he turned Thawne away and he became the Reverse Flash. Reverse Flash wants to gain his friend's respect and become an integral part of his history, so he traveled through time to mess with Barry's life, doing rather minor things like tripping him on the stairs when he was a kid and going to such extremes as killing his mother in front of him as a child. Reverse Flash's ability to manipulate the timeline makes him almost unstoppable, as if someone gets in his way, he simply travels through time and erases them from existence, as he did to his own brother, Roburn. Due to him being so weaved throughout history, Barry can't even stop him without risking creating an alternate timeline, as when he prevented Reverse Flash from killing Nora Allen and accidentally created the dystopian Flashpoint timeline. Even when Barry does manage to kill Thawne, because he is so connected to the negative Speed Force, he is always brought back before long. Number 7. Doomsday. In the ancient Kryptonian days, a scientist wanted to create the ultimate life form. He accomplished this by sending a baby onto the planet's surface and waiting for either the elements or the creatures of the planet to, let's say, help the baby buy the farm. He would then take whatever remains were left and clone the baby to create a stronger clone, effectively forcing evolution to create the most brutal and effective creature possible. After decades of this process, Doomsday was born. Doomsday is nearly impossible to defeat, being essentially invulnerable and super strong. If you do manage to hurt him, he has a powerful healing factor that will almost immediately undo the damage. If you manage to kill him, he not only comes back to life, but will be evolved to resist damage from whatever hurt him before. He is an unstoppable force that only gets better at fighting you each time. When he first came to Earth, he was able to tear through the entire Justice League with them barely slowing him down, and the only person on Earth capable of standing up to him was Superman. Superman was eventually able to kill Doomsday, but it took him having to not hold back at all, and even then, the effort killed him in the process as well. Number 6. Parallax. Parallax is a parasitic demon entity that is the embodiment of fear. He spent years traveling the galaxy, causing civilizations to destroy themselves out of paranoia until the Guardians of the Universe trapped Parallax in the Green Lantern's central power battery on the planet Oa for billions of years. This yellow fear demon living in the battery is the reason that for years, Green Lanterns were unable to affect anything that was the color yellow. Parallax influenced the mind of Hal Jordan, making him more and more anxious ambitious and self-doubting until he was driven mad by the destruction of his home, Coast City. In an effort to try and restore his home, Hal went on a rampage, killing the entire Green Lantern Corps and destroying the central power battery, allowing Parallax to graft onto Hal's soul, causing him to start going by the name Parallax and acting as a villain until he was eventually killed. The Spectre then freed Hal's spirit from the demon. Despite the fact that he can be trapped, Parallax is the embodiment of an emotional concept, fear, and is therefore unable to be killed. Beyond that, he is also able to manipulate reality, being able to create and destroy new planets at will. Number 5. Trigon. Trigon was a regular evil ruler of a planet until one day a group of aliens known as the Divine showed up, hoping to use something called the Great Heart of Darkness to eat his soul and cleanse the planet of evil. This backfired as Trigon absorbed the heart and gained the power of 100 galaxies worth of collected evils. It was at this point that the Divine revealed that they were not a boy band as their name suggested, but were in fact his parents. This family reunion was cut short when Trigon skinned them and wore them like coats. He would go on to have many sons whose mothers he would kill, and one daughter, Raven. Raven would not end up going into the family business, but would instead end up joining the Teen Titans and becoming Trigon's greatest enemy. He has mind control powers, shape-shifting, dimensional travel, the ability to manipulate matter, and telepathy and telekinesis, just to name a few of his powers. He is immortal, having apparently been around since the dawn of time, and nearly invulnerable, having shrugged off blows from Wonder Girl and Superboy, with Superboy even saying that punching Trigon felt like trying to destroy a mountain with a teaspoon. Number 4. Darkseid. After the old gods died in a battle against evil, the planets New Genesis and Apocalypse were born. The latter fell under the control of an evil and tyrannical new god called Darkseid. New Genesis housed the source of all life, the life equation, and Darkseid became obsessed with finding its opposite force, the anti-life equation. He discovered that the anti-life equation was on the planet Earth and began a campaign to conquer the planet, bringing him into constant conflict with the members of the Justice League, particularly Superman. He is all but immortal, invulnerable, and super strong. As if that wasn't bad enough, he is also an incredible tactician with a keen scientific mind who has telepathic powers and the ability to shoot omega beams from his eyes, which he can use to either destroy or teleport his victims, such as when he sent Batman back to caveman times at the end of Final Crisis, essentially turning the Dark Knight into a temporal bomb. Even Superman has trouble going toe-to-toe with this god, whose only weakness is a substance called radium. Number 3. Mr. Mxyzptlk. Mr. Mxyzptlk is a fifth-dimensional being who has developed an obsession with Superman and likes to spend his time harassing the Man of Steel and putting him through various ordeals for his own amusement. He can fly, teleport, and create essentially anything he likes with just a thought. He is also a character with cosmic awareness, sometimes speaking directly to the reader as though he is aware of his place in a comic book. He is a relatively benign nuisance most of the time, merely wanting to put Superman through the ringer with his various cosmic pranks, but he is capable of extreme villainy when he wants to be, such as in Alan Moore's Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, where he grows bored and decides to become truly evil, manipulating events to kill several of Superman's friends and ruining his life in the process. Mixie is so powerful that even he thinks it's unfair. So, to be a good sport, he gave himself a weakness that makes it so that the only way to stop him is to trick Mr. Mxyzptlk into saying his name backwards, which is of course Kiltipzixum. When you consider that this is a self-imposed weakness, and in theory if he wanted to remove this rule he could at any time, it makes you realize just how unstoppable he really is. Number 2. The Anti-Monitor. When a scientist on the planet Oa developed a screen to witness the creation of the universe, this caused a massive explosion which split reality and formed the multiverse. The Oans began a civil war, and several of them left for the Quard dimension, seeking the means to become all-powerful. Quard was in the antimatter dimension, and one day an excess energy on Quard's moon formed into a being known as the Anti-Monitor, who fed off of the evil energy of the antimatter universe and took over his universe. He wanted to then destroy all the positive matter universes in order to become as powerful as possible, causing the Crisis on Infinite Earths, where he went to war with the various superheroes of the multiverse, which resulted in the multiverse being streamlined into one universe. Barely any of those sound like real words. He has destroyed and absorbed over 1,000 universes and is capable of being able able to alter reality and increase the power levels of the villains who serve him. He is essentially immortal, being able to fight the strongest heroes from hundreds of universes at once without taking any apparent damage. It was only through the actions of the Spectre, who had been empowered by all of the various DC Universe's most powerful sorcerers, that the heroes were able to defeat him at the dawn of time. He was eventually killed by Superman 2, but was restored to life when the multiverse was recreated. Number 1. Necron. Necron's origins are shrouded in mystery, with rumors that he existed before life or was created by darkness itself to serve as its protector. Other stories say that he was imprisoned into the land of the unliving by the guardians of the universe near the beginning of time. For most of eternity he was unaware of life, but once he discovered its existence, he became obsessed with becoming its master. He fought against the Green Lantern several times with his army of the undead until he formed his own Lantern Corps by trapping the Anti-Monitor in his own central power battery. The Black Lanterns are comprised of dead superheroes as well as the entire population of the destroyed Coast City, who he has resurrected and forced to fight on his behalf. Even when his physical form is defeated, as he was never technically alive, he is simply sent back to the land of the unliving to begin plotting a new scheme to destroy life itself. Number 10. Dr. Doom. Some of you are already typing your comments claiming that Victor Von Doom is not a villain and is instead an anti-hero. I would disagree, saying that he's at best an anti-villain, but honestly if I didn't include him I'd be getting just as many comments complaining about his exclusion, so let's put him at the bottom and agree that Dr. Doom started out as a villain and has become more nuanced and difficult to peg down in the years since. Victor Von Doom was the child of Romani people living in Latveria. His mother was a sorceress, and after her and his father's passing, Victor began to study her books, teaching himself the dark arts. He also developed a keen scientific mind, which made him a legendary scientist and inventor at a very young age, and led to him being tracked down by the US military and offered further education in the States. It was here that he met Reed Richards, with whom he developed a lifelong rivalry. While still in school, he developed his infamous Doom bots and also built a functional time machine. He was disfigured in an accident that resulted in his expulsion, and he went on to become the leader of some monks who helped him build his iconic armor. He became the main antagonist of the Fantastic Four and the dictator of the country of Latveria, causing lots of problems for the heroes of the Marvel Universe. His status as one of the most brilliant minds on Earth, as well as him being one of the Earth's most powerful sorcerers, combined with his diplomatic immunity, makes him a force to be reckoned with for both the heroes and the villains of the Marvel Universe.
And at number 9 is Sabretooth. Sabretooth is like the darker, bigger, and stronger brother of Wolverine. He isn't actually Wolverine's brother, but the fights between Wolverine and Sabretooth were the absolute most bloody, knockdown, drag-out, legendary fights that go to such drastic extremes, and that's because neither of these guys can really be stopped, since they both possess an absolutely massive, powerful healing factor. They share a lot of qualities, honestly. Sabretooth has adamantium-laced bones and claws, superhuman senses, superhuman attributes, and even psionic resistances as well. The thing about Sabretooth is that he is just pure animalistic fury, a mindless killing machine, but one who has the training to make him just that much more of a force to be reckoned with. Even when he is stopped, he's almost never fully destroyed because of that damn healing factor that makes him next to impossible to bring down. Sure, he doesn't warp reality or cross-dimensional barriers, but even when he was thrown into the pit on Krakoa, where he was trapped alive but unable to move, he still proved a problem as he figured out how to escape.
Magneto. When Mac Eisenhart was a young man in Germany, he was subjected to many atrocities at the hands of the Third Reich, who sent him to Auschwitz for no reason other than being Jewish. He eventually escaped and became known as Erich Lenscher. He discovered that he had the ability to control the powers of magnetism, and after the war, used them to track down former German soldiers. He developed the belief that mutants and humanity could not coexist and became Magneto, a mutant dedicated to mutant superiority and the leader of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. He fought the X-Men several times over the years, but they eventually came to an uneasy truce, working together to form a refuge for their kind on the island of Krakoa, which is good for everyone as Magneto is a very difficult villain to stop and has stood up to the entire Avengers team, once reversed the Earth's magnetic poles, and also created a global EMP, which took out the world's technology, showing that he could plunge us back to the Dark Ages whenever he wants.
Number 7. Apocalypse. The name of the game for Apocalypse, or En Sabanur, is survival of the fittest. His powers manifested back in ancient Egypt with the powers of immortality and the ability to alter the molecular structure of his own body. Now, we unfortunately have to talk about time travel here. I'm sorry. While Apocalypse has history with Kang the Conqueror as Rama Tut, the more important time traveler that Apocalypse deals with is Nathan Summers, aka Cable. In the future world of Cable, Apocalypse had conquered the world, so in order to stop that, Nathan went back to ancient Egypt to defeat Apocalypse. Now during that fight, the techno-organic arm of Cable bonded to Apocalypse, who used it to interact with a celestial spaceship and integrate all of its technology into himself, amplifying and enhancing his existing powers, allowing him to do pretty much anything. He can teleport, interface with any technology, grant himself almost any power like strength, flight, energy beams, telepathy, telekinesis, and all kinds of stuff. Obviously, it all depends on the story he's in. He's so incredibly OP that his powers wax and wane based on the story. Like in the X-Men animated TV show, he grew to like 1,000 feet tall and just used energy beams to completely vaporize the X-Men. And that could totally happen in the comics too at any point if it served the story. Usually he just sends out his horsemen to test the mutants though. The thing that makes him even more unstoppable is his ability to move his spiritual essence into new host bodies when his physical body is either worn out from his massive power or destroyed in a fight.
Number 6. Hela. Hela is the daughter of Loki, who was appointed by Odin to be the goddess of death. He would come to regret this choice, as Hela soon began several attempts to steal his and his son Thor's souls and to conquer Asgard for herself. In one of her most disturbing plots, she cursed Thor with immortal life, but a frail and decrepit body. She eventually reversed this and moved to Las Vegas, where she began to feed upon the souls of the unlucky. As the goddess of death, she can't really die, and is able to heal any injury with great speed, even being able to come back from disintegration. She has the power to kill immortal beings with a simple touch, making her a force to be reckoned with for Thor, let alone the normal human heroes he works with.
Number 5. The Fury. Many people may actually not know of the Fury, and there's a rather simple reason for that. The Fury came about in Marvel Superheroes UK, which is Marvel's attempt to branch out to British audiences and revamp Captain Britain. But it was also a way for Marvel to open up and explain the concept of the multiverse, and this all happened in the Crooked World story. This story deals with one of the most powerful reality warping mutants ever, named Mad Jim Jaspers on Earth 238. But he's not even the focus of this point. Mad Jim Jaspers became the leading political leader in England, rallying the people against superheroes, and he created what was essentially a robot called the Fury, for the sole purpose of taking down superheroes, and my lord, the Fury is good at it. In the matter of 2 years, the Fury decimated every single superpowered being on Earth 238 except for Jim Jaspers. The Fury is similar to the Sentinels we see in the X-Men Days of Future Past movie, because this robot can analyze superhuman powers or any threat and modify its own defenses and capabilities to combat it. But it can also fire extremely potent energy blasts and even restore itself after being completely destroyed. The Fury ends up completely obliterating Captain Britain, causing him to be revived. And that was all a test for Captain Britain to face the much more powerful Mad Jim Jaspers from Earth 616. Now, the universe of Earth 238 gets destroyed, but the Fury adapts to even that and develops the ability to travel across dimensional barriers to continue its mission. The only thing going against this being is that he doesn't have a ton of appearances, so it's kind of hard to judge him against other beings.
Number 4. Thanos. Thanos was born on one of Saturn's moons, Titan, and had the deviant gene, which gave him thick purple skin as well as superior strength and heightened powers. He fell in love with a woman who turned out to be death, and dedicated his life to impressing her by destroying as many living things as possible. Thanos has conquered countless worlds in his quest to impress death, and is responsible for unleashing unspeakable horrors upon them. For instance, when he conquers a world, it is not uncommon for him to demand a tribute of the heads of everyone from the ages of 16 to 22. This insane demand is part of his plan to fulfill a request from death to rid the universe of any of his offspring, and rather than put in the time to find out where learned who his children are, he chooses to save time by implementing this method. As he is pretty much unstoppable for anyone but the most powerful superheroes, most planets are forced to go along with his insane demands. In his most iconic moment, he came up with a plan to acquire the Infinity Gems and wipe out half of all life in the universe in order to impress his love. Unlike many other evildoers who make these elaborate plans and then fail, Thanos actually pulled this off, getting all the gems and using the Infinity Gauntlet to enact his deadly romantic gesture.
Number 3, the Void. I think one of my favorite things that Marvel's done is create the Sentry. Essentially a Superman-like character, but like, in my opinion, way cooler. A large part of what makes him so much better is that while he is essentially a godlike superhero who inspired all the other heroes who exist, he also has a dark persona called the Void. The Void went on a rampage that took the lives of around 1 million people and almost destroyed Manhattan. And so, Sentry made the decision with other heroes like Reed Richards and Doctor Strange to cause the entire world to forget about his existence. Now, in New Avengers, which started in 2004/2005, the Sentry comes back to the world, and through a series of events, the Void also returns. Full rosters of the Avengers, X-Men, and the Fantastic Four all went to take on the Void, and they couldn't do a damn thing. Only the Sentry himself could really subdue the Void, and it, in classic supervillain fashion, vowed to come back. And it totally did. In the Siege event, Norman Osborn decided to attack Asgard, and he used the Sentry to do this. Problem is that the Sentry ended up unleashing the Void, and it totally obliterated Asgard completely, taking out Loki in the process. This did actually branch off into a what-if story where the Void was never stopped and destroyed every superhero on Earth, and then went off into the universe to basically do the same thing. The Void exists as long as the Sentry exists, and the Sentry keeps on coming back to life every time he somehow gets defeated. The Sentry is basically a god, and the Void is this god's devil. Number 2, Zom. Just because Zom looks like your uncle's hairy big toe does not mean that you should underestimate him. Zom is one of the most powerful and scary extra-dimensional entities in existence, being described as worse than a dozen Umars. Umar is the sister of Dormammu, for anyone who wanted to know. Now, speaking of Dormammu, it took all of his power plus the help of the cosmic being Eternity just to restrain Zom with the magical chain called the Links of Living Bondage and with an object called the Crown of Blindness. And with these tools, these massively powerful beings managed to trap Zom in a jar. Now, I know it sounds silly, I'm downplaying it. It was actually an amphora, and Zom was trapped in a quote world beyond worlds in a quote time beyond all time. That was just his origin story though. Eons into the future, in Strange Tales number 156 from 1967, Doctor Strange unleashed Zom in a fight against Umar, but that was a mistake because now Strange had no way of taking on Zom, like at all. He had to turn to the Living Tribunal, the personification of multiversal law, the representative for the one above all, and the highest authority in the multiverse, just to banish Zom. Zom wasn't really released again, but Strange did channel Zom's power in a fight against Worldbreaker Hulk when that event happened, and using that power he did indeed pummel the hell out of the Hulk until Strange started to lose control and pass out. Lastly, in Doctor Strange's final recent moments, he was taken down by the Hood, who held an assault on the Sanctum Sanctorum with like 50 other villains, and Strange managed to rise again, but channeling the power of Zom, which he used to take out everyone. Then, Strange left the mortal plane.
Number 1, the one below all. So, the one above all is the ruler of the multiverse and the creator of all life in it. Although he is the source of love and good, he also has an evil form known as the one below all, who is the personification of hatred and destruction. The ruler of the lowest point of reality, the below place, it is able to manifest itself on Earth through the mutagenic form of gamma radiation. This means that when Bruce Banner was caught in the gamma bomb, he was infused with this dark entity's power. The one below all wants to become the only remaining thing in the multiverse and to destroy everything else. As he is incapable of having his own personality without a host, it waited until Hulk's father, Brian Banner, died to merge merge with him and take on his personality. The leader eventually managed to absorb Brian's soul in hopes of learning more about the One Below All, but was possessed by it instead. He is a terrifying foe who can never really be killed, and who, as a dark aspect of the One Above All, is technically also the creator of everything he's trying to destroy. If you want more information on the One Below All, check out our video attempting to explain the Immortal Hulk, where he is the puppet master pulling all the strings against the Green Goliath.
Coming in at number 10 is Kang the Conqueror. Kang is a little bit of an interesting pick for this list, as he totally can be stopped and has been multiple times. Thanks to the advanced time period he comes from though, Nathaniel Richards has an increased lifespan, making him look 40 when he's actually 7 years old. That's fine, that doesn't make him unstoppable. What makes him unstoppable is a couple of things. For starters, as most people know, Kang has a huge relationship with time. A version of this guy exists at almost all moments of the time stream, and not just one version of him, as there have been Kangs from different universes that have shown up as well. So not only can Nathaniel Richards show up at any point in the time stream in any of his numerous identities that all have their own long history, but his alternate universe versions are almost always set to make an appearance in his place. And then, on top of that, until recently, Nathaniel had the ability to transfer his consciousness to another body when he passed away. Nathaniel, Ramatut, Iron Lad, Kid Immortus, Scarlet Centurion, Immortus himself, Mr. Griffin, He Who Remains, whatever you want to call him, Kang the Conqueror is pretty much unstoppable. Number 9. Galactus. The being formerly known as Galen of the planet Ta lived before the modern cosmos in the previous cosmos. Galen gestated with the sentience of the universe for billions of years, transforming into the devourer of worlds, finding sustenance by ingesting entire planets, preferably those with living sentient beings that have much more energy for him to harness. Now when Galactus destroys and consumes a planet, he is sort of bringing balance to the universe, kind of like how life is given and taken away every day on Earth, which makes him an essential part of the universe. He's known for the destruction of the Skrull Empire and has attempted to devour the Earth so many freaking times. And I guess other planets for that matter too, or whatever. Galactus is also famous for his heralds such as Silver Surfer and the Cosmic Ghost Rider, and so many others. And while they are all powerful beings themselves, usually even before they gain the herald power boost, they don't hold a candle to Galactus himself. His only caveat is that Galactus's power depends on his planet's consumption. So a weakened Galactus has been taken out before, but if he eats like 4 or more planets or something, he's been able to defeat multiple mad celestials all by himself. He's powered by food, and I think pretty much all of us can understand that. Coming in at number 8, Abraxas. Abraxas is the polar opposite of the cosmic entity Eternity. So, being the opposite of Eternity, his whole reason for existing is to destroy all of the multiverse, which, I'll be honest, there are a few different characters in Marvel who exist for that reason, and funnily enough, a bunch of them are on this list. Abraxas is tied to Galactus too, because when Galactus would consume a planet, it would keep Abraxas in check. So, when Galactus is taken off the board in Galactus the Devourer, Abraxas is released and begins his path of ultimate destruction. As a cosmic entity, Abraxas' powers are essentially limitless, and his whole existence is kind of important to the universe, which means he can't really be taken out like a normal villain. So, how the heck do the heroes come out on top against this guy? Well, in Fantastic Four number 48 to 50, we learned of an incredibly powerful weapon called the Ultimate Nullifier. It was used back then to threaten Galactus and stop him from destroying our Earth. Now the heroes, specifically Reed Richards, ended up using the Ultimate Nullifier to essentially rewrite reality, destroying reality and remaking it so that Abraxas just never existed. That's the route we had to go to here. Kinda makes you wonder why Marvel would even write such a powerful villain in the first place, but if you're enjoying this list so far, well, we've got a ton more like it on our channel that you should definitely subscribe to. Or you could just give a thumbs up to this video, that's also helpful. Thanks. Number 7, Mephisto. Within the Marvel Universe, Mephisto is, for all intents and purposes, the devil. He isn't actually. Technically, he is a demonic hell lord who rules over his own hell-like dimension and enjoys stealing people's souls by tricking them, and he does that by pretending he is the actual devil, playing on people's fears, so basically, he's the devil. While Mephisto is within his dimension, which he calls hell, he is immortal, omniscient, and impossible to destroy. It's only when he ventures into other realms that he can be defeated, but doing so just kind of returns him back to his own dimension. He has been a major player in the Marvel Universe since his creation and has been either a key or supporting player for many major events. He was the Snake in the old Adam and Eve story. He was directly responsible for the creation of Ghost Rider. He's infamously erased the history of Peter Parker and Mary Jane's marriage in order to save Aunt May's life. I mean, he even popped up a hotel out of the ground in Las Vegas that manipulated the citizens and let him take their souls. He has been defeated and outmaneuvered multiple times, but he has never permanently been stopped. Number 6, the Phoenix Force. Now it's important to say the Phoenix Force is not a villain, technically. It is a cosmic entity representing all life in the Omniverse. The Phoenix Force will exist as long as there is, was, or will be life. If the Phoenix Force were to be destroyed, if that were even possible, all life would follow after it, as well as the ability for life to have begun in the first place. The Phoenix Force is just a force of nature, but it has been used as a darker force of power in the past. For example, when it inhabited Jean Grey during the Dark Phoenix saga. It was at this time the entity was a villain, using Jean's insane levels of psychic power, which it then amplified to godlike levels. With this entity inhabiting her body, Jean and the Phoenix destroyed an entire solar system and attacked her fellow X-Men. Jean had to actually bring her own end just to stop what was happening, and when the Phoenix regained its memories of all the evil it had done, it brought Jean back to life to help make things a little better. And that's not the only time. There was the whole X-Men versus Avengers thing, and there was that time that Thane, Thanos' son, had the Phoenix Force. Almost every time the power of the Phoenix Force comes up, it usually corrupts its bearer and makes like a big stink. Like a huge stink. Big old fart. Number 5, Dormammu. Most fans of Doctor Strange know Dormammu. This being composed of pure magic energy rules the dark dimension and spends most of his time taking over other realities as he finds them. He's essentially immortal and capable of wielding godly power over magic, the dead, souls, and pretty much anything, really. When he is in our reality, he can be thwarted and returned to his own, usually by the Sorcerer Supreme, but within the dark dimension, he reigns supreme and cannot be taken down, like, at all. Using his vast magical abilities and the influence of his power, he is constantly trying to invade our reality, and even when he is banished back or he is stopped, he always comes back eventually, and he has been doing this for millennia. Number 4, the Beyonder. The Beyonder is a singular entity with no duplicate versions of himself in other universes, similar to the Phoenix Force. And also a lot like the Phoenix Force, Beyonder is basically like a baby in that he is a younger member of a race called the Beyonders that are a near omnipotent alien race from a dimension outside of the multiverse. He is himself basically a whole universe. It's really hard to explain, but as he observes Earth and the Marvel Universe and the various races, he gets a little curious, and the Beyonder decides to study and analyze life and humanity, good and evil and conflict, and to that purpose he pits Earth's mightiest heroes and villains against each other in the Secret Wars. Now, he did this by destroying an entire system of planets and creating Battleworld from the remains and from parts of Earth. So that's one level of power right there. Beyonder's powers surpass that of Eternity and the Living Tribunal, but that has been retconned recently. And he is capable of manipulating reality to his will, being able to pretty much do whatever he wants and then grant himself any power he wants. It was actually a huge treat though last year in the Defenders Beyond story when we learned that the Beyonder and his race were actually still in existence, and he was now an adult existing with the rest of the adult Beyonders outside of the multiverse and being all levels of wildly insanely powerful. There's a lot I skimmed over here to make it less confusing, but you should just go read all the Secret Wars if you want to see how crazy these beings actually are. Number 3, Sidorak. Sidorak, also known as the Destroyer, is an incredibly powerful extra-dimensional being who was worshipped as a god and as a demon by the primitive humans of Earth until he was banished back to the Crimson Cosmos, which is where he comes from. Now, as the Destroyer, Sidorak's main goal is to just cause destruction and raise destructive power. Simple as that. To do this though, from the Crimson Cosmos, and also to win a wager with 8 other godlike deities like himself, he created the Crimson Gem of Sidorak, which allows him to select a person to be his avatar, enhancing them to become the indestructible and immortal Juggernaut, which kinda gives us 2 different versions of Unstoppable all wrapped up into one package. You're welcome. Merry Christmas. That's for you. As the Juggernaut is essentially a physically unstoppable force of kinetic energy, unless you're the Hulk, I guess, then you can stop him. I don't know why. Anyways, Cyttorak is such a powerful and unstoppable godlike entity that you will even hear magic users invoking his name to cast some of their strongest spells. For example, the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak. Number 2, the Chaos King. While he is relatively obscure, he is nothing to scoff at. Amatsu Mikobashi, first appearing in Thor Blood Oath number 6 in 2006, was mistaken as the Japanese god of chaos and evil, but in actuality, he was an aspect of the cosmic being Oblivion. Now, Mikobashi ruled and thrived over the earth when it was nothing more than a formless void of primordial darkness. And as such, his goal now is to put an end to creation and bring about a new age of chaos and void and darkness. He is a primordial being who was imprisoned in Yomi, which is the Shinto underworld, which is where he remained for centuries, accruing an army of Oni, which is Shinma demons, and other monsters. Now, during the events of Ares, god of war, Chaos King attacks Olympus after he defeated and controlled the Japanese pantheon of gods, and after the fall of Asgard during Ragnarok. This is what kind of kickstarts his mission in Chaos War, where he slays the Egyptian gods, Celtic gods, Shi'ar gods, gods of Zen law. He takes out Nightmare in the dream dimension, destroys Mephisto, and casts Mistress Death out of hell, making her literally run away. And he releases the souls of the damned. He did all that. He has the power to defeat eternity and is practically unfazed by attacks from the likes of Zeus. God Hercules, Galactus, Silver Surfer, and Thor together could not defeat Chaos King. To win, Hercules had to literally punch him into a portal to an endless void of nothingness, and this was after he destroyed 98.76% of the entire universe. That's a lot. Number 1, Chthon. Chthon is one of the most powerful demons to ever exist. Even though he predates anything like this, of all the devil-like demons out there, including Mephisto, Chthon is the closest thing to the actual devil. He and his Ngari actually ruled the earth before the angel Lucifer attacked them, and that was before Lucifer ever rebelled against heaven and became the actual devil. Chthon himself is responsible for all the witches, werewolves, vampires, and other dark creatures, as well as being the master of the most powerful form of magic, chaos magic, which is the same stuff used by the Scarlet Witch. The Scarlet Witch has altered all of reality with just a fraction of that magic, so yeah, it's a lot. His opposite, Oshter, is one of the 3 beings that make up the Vishanti, and they stand in direct opposition to Chthon specifically, creating the Book of Vishanti in response to Chthon's Darkhold. Other demons and dark sorcerers, including Dormammu and Mephisto, call on Chthon's name to cast some of their strongest spells, and the Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange, was almost corrupted and permanently taken out by Chthon's mere presence alone. He is extremely hard to bring down, and even if you manage to do so, it's only a matter of time until he comes back.
Number 10, the Kingpin. The way that the Ultimate Universe handles Wilson Fisk is pretty close to how he is in the main 616 universe. He is a kingpin of crime who uses fear and money to avoid the consequences of his criminal actions. His activities are an open secret, but no one can get enough evidence together to actually stop him. Sure, he loses some fights over the course of his time in the comics, but he is unstoppable in a much more realistic and kind of depressing way because of the corruption that he has sown into the city. After obtaining a magical Egyptian relic known as the Zodiac Key, he found that without even having to use the item, it caused enough fear that he could run the city's crime almost unopposed. In a move that is an undeniable win on Fisk's part, he bought the merchandise rights to Spider-Man's likeness, meaning that he was making massive amounts of money off of his enemy. He was eventually arrested after trying to have the Ultimate Moon Knight killed, but when the Ultimatum wave washed away much of New York, all of the records of his crime were destroyed in the disaster, and he was able to go free. He was permanently stopped when he was thrown out of a window by Mysterio, though. Number 9, Sabretooth. Earth 1610's Victor Creed is quite similar to the original version, with him being a bit of a psycho with claws, heightened senses, and a healing factor. He believed that humans were more cruel than less evolved animals, and therefore, mutants should be even worse. He became a ruthless killer who delighted in causing his victims as much pain as possible before he was eventually recruited to the Weapon X program. After Wolverine left the program, Sabretooth was given similar, though more extensive, adamantium upgrades, and he was sent to retrieve Wolverine. From that point on in his history, Sabretooth came into frequent conflict with the X-Men, the Ultimates, and various random heroes of the Ultimate Universe. He soon joined the Ultimate version of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, the Brotherhood of Mutant Superiority, being a consistent thorn in Wolverine's side. Sabretooth makes this list despite the fact that he is frequently apprehended or defeated because of his incredible healing factor. He has been shot, stabbed, and even decapitated, and yet he always comes back. So, though he can be defeated, he can only ever be stopped on a temporary basis. Number 8. Dr. Octopus. Doc Ock's origin is pretty much the same as his original. He gets in a lab accident that makes him able to control his metal arms telepathically, and he uses those arms to do crime. However, he is different from the classic Ock in a few ways. This version of Octavius is so linked to his arms that he can control them even when he is separated from them, such as in Ultimate Spider-Man number 54, when he summoned his arms with his mind and used them to escape prison. After Spider-Man defeated him again, Nick Fury had Ock's arms destroyed in molten steel, thinking that would stop Ock once and for all. But we found out that there was another difference between this Ock and the original. He was actually a mutant, with powers similar to Magneto's. He hadn't been controlling the arms, he had been controlling the metal in the arms. He then used this mutant ability to cause metal in the building to form together new arms for himself, and he fought Spider-Man and Spider-Woman in a cyclone of flying shards of metal. So, while the old Ock could be stopped by removing his arms, this Ock has way more ways to come back from a loss, and can't be stopped for long. That is, until Green Goblin beat him to death. But hey, that's why he's so low on the list. Number 7. Venom. Ultimate Venom is not an alien symbiote, but a genetically engineered suit developed by Eddie Brock and Peter Parker's dads. When Peter used the symbiote to get his black suit, Eddie became jealous and fused with a sample of the symbiote that was in storage. This caused him to become Venom. While in Venom form, he has an insatiable hunger and has to consume people at a regular rate in order to not be consumed from within the suit. He has all of the classic Venom's powers, like the strength, the healing, the ability to override Peter's spider sense, but unlike the classic Venom, he doesn't have the same level of weakness to sonics and fire. Electricity is his weakness, but his savagery makes him even more dangerous than the original Venom. He became even more powerful when he absorbed the Carnage symbiote, becoming even bigger and monstrous than before. Number 6. Namor. Namor was introduced in the 610 universe in Ultimate Fantastic Four number 24, when the Four were helping Mary Storm with her discovery of Atlantis, and they found a sarcophagus which contained Namor. The translation of the Atlantean language said that Namor was king of Atlantis before it was destroyed. However, they soon discovered that this Namor was much less noble than his 616 counterpart. A revised translation revealed that he had not been entombed, he had been imprisoned, and that he was not a king, but the most dangerous supercriminal in all of Atlantean history. He tried to seduce Sue Storm, but was rejected. He didn't take this well and went on a rampage. He went toe-to-toe with the Thing, withstood the full force of the Human Torch's power, stretched Mr. Fantastic almost to the breaking point, and smashed through Sue's force fields. He defeated the team and held the city hostage with a tsunami, threatening to destroy the city unless Sue gave him a kiss. She complied and Namor departed. In subsequent appearances, he has been a bit more chill and did lose some fights, but that debut says it all. Number 5. Magneto. Ultimate Magneto has all the powers that the original does, but none of his mercy. He doesn't just view mutants as superior to humans, he views humans as insects. In one of his most amazing moments, he stormed Washington with sentinels that he had reprogrammed and dragged the president naked onto the White House lawn to kill him. The only reason that he was stopped by the X-Men was because his own son, Quicksilver, saw that things had gone too far and betrayed his father, removing his helmet with his super speed. In his biggest plot, he actually proved how much of a nearly unstoppable force he could really be. In Ultimatum, Magneto had been driven mad at the loss of his children, and he decided that rather than destroying humanity in order to make the world safe from mutants, he's just gonna kill everyone. He uses a Doomsday device and his powers to shift the world off of its axis, causing disasters all over the globe. Much of Europe, including all of Latveria, is frozen under a layer of ice ice, and New York is hit by a massive tidal wave. Millions of people all over the world die in the attack. He plans on using the plan again to decimate the rest of the world, but all of the heroes left in the world team up to stop him, and Cyclops ends up killing him. But the fact that he got as far into his plan as he did, and that it took literally every hero in the world working together to stop him, is pretty impressive. Number 4. Apocalypse. So the 1610 version of Apocalypse is one of the most changed versions of a classic villain. This universe's Mr. Sinister was a scientist who had a psychotic break and believed himself to be working at the behest of Apocalypse. He made Mr. Sinister track down and kill several mutants, believing that it would cause his master to manifest on Earth. When he had completed his task, Sinister floated into the air and was transformed into Apocalypse. The X-Men attacked him but didn't count on his ability to take their mutant powers away. He tore off Wolverine's arm and battled both the X-Men and the Morlocks, and used his powers to make the two groups fight each other against their will. He then fought a group of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and the Fantastic Four, who couldn't hurt him in the slightest. Professor X then attacked with his mental powers, but Apocalypse was somehow able to resist and overpower the Professor. It would have been curtains for Charles, but Jean Grey unleashed the Phoenix Force and destroyed the villain. So he was able to take on the combined forces of the Morlocks, S.H.I.E.L.D., the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four, and the only force powerful enough to cause him any trouble at all was the Phoenix Force, which, by the way, is much less villainous in the Ultimate Universe. Number 3. The Hulk. In the mainline Marvel Universe, the Hulk is a misunderstood creature who will go on rampages, but goes out of his way to protect innocent people, and ultimately does more good than harm. The Ultimate Hulk is a bit different. In this universe, Bruce Banner grew up hating his scrawny body, and was working to develop a new version of the Super Soldier Serum, which he tested on himself, transforming him into the Hulk. This Hulk causes a lot more collateral damage than his 616 version, routinely causing hundreds of deaths when rampaging through cities. He is also known for eating people that he doesn't like. He did a few heroic acts, but on the whole, he has done a lot more harm with his frequent rampages and his eventual team up with the villainous Maker to fight the Ultimates, the 1610 version of the Avengers. Like the classic Hulk, there are very few characters who can stand up to Hulk, and even if they do, his healing factor is so efficient that any injuries will soon be healed. If that wasn't intimidating enough, there was a time where this evil Hulk stole the Infinity Gems and used them to fight the heroes. So Hulk with an Infinity Gauntlet. Yikes. Number 2. The Green Goblin. This is the villain that got one of the biggest makeovers in the Ultimate Universe. Norman Osborn was trying to develop a super soldier serum, which he called the Oz formula. After an Oz-infected spider bit Peter Parker and gave him spider powers, Norman theorized that since the Oz and spider DNA had made Peter the way he was, injecting himself with Oz mixed with his own DNA would turn him into a heightened version of himself. Instead, it turned him into a hideous giant goblin creature. While the 616 goblin has super strength and uses a glider with pumpkin bombs, this goblin had insane super strength as well as fortified tissues that made him very difficult to hurt. He had a powerful healing factor and could launch fiery bolts of energy from his hands. True, Spider-Man would often foil his plans and he was presumed dead several times, but his real ace in the hole is that the Oz formula made him immortal, so he would always return to life. So even if you could stop him, it would never be long before he returned for revenge. Number 1. The Maker. Reed Richards is often called the smartest man alive in the Marvel Universe, and alongside the Fantastic Four, is one of Earth's greatest heroes. His ego has often led to him making some questionable decisions, but he has been instrumental in saving the Earth from several threats, including Galactus and the Skrull. Despite his heroics, we did witness a spectacular fall from grace for Reed in the Ultimate Comics universe, where the combined stress of the Fantastic Four breaking up and Sue Storm rejecting his marriage proposal caused Reed to snap and blow up his childhood home to fake his death, killing his family in the process. He went on to use aliens under his control to attack the heroes. He was eventually defeated and disfigured by the Human Torch and flung into the negative zone. But Reed returned to Earth and took on the identity of the Maker, and set out on a twisted quest to make the world perfect. He killed all the Asgardians in an attempt to understand Thor's power, and used an antimatter attack on Washington, D.C., killing POTUS, his cabinet, and all of Congress. The Maker went on to do a lot of twisted stuff, fighting the heroes of his own Earth as well as the heroes of Earth 616, showing just how dangerous Reed Richards can be when his massive brain is turned against Marvel's heroes. He is the ultimate threat to the Ultimate Universe, and just as dangerous to the 616 universe.